All right, it's time for the very first Uncle Lou schedule preview for the 2023 season. Please remember, these are not prediction videos. Every year when I do these, I get comments to go, I watched the whole thing, the guy never even gave a record. These aren't prediction videos. I made a whole video where I explained what these are, but I know a lot of people won't watch that. But this is just an overview of the schedule. Is it harder or easier than last year? What about the non-con games? Is the non-con schedule harder or easier? What about the conference games? Are there tougher games or games that appear to be tougher? Are they on the road or do they get some of their tougher games at home? Where's the bye week? Will that factor in any way to what type of a season they end up having? Where's the rivalry games? Where's the trap games? Are there any 2 or 3 game stretches of difficult games in a row? That can be a problem. That kind of thing. Before you could start predicting a team's record, there's certain things you have to know. Roster, coaches, are there any injuries? Something important to know when getting ready to predict a team's record is who they play, when they play, and where they play. That's kind of the point of these videos. I go through these teams one by one, go through the schedule game by game, kind of compare it to last year. Anyway, let's get started. Up first, Greenbow, Alabama. Up first, the Alabama Crimson Tide. Shout out to my man. I made a post over on my Patreon page the other day, and my man Sean, Money Man, was the first one to comment. I made a post about these schedule previews, and he was the first one to comment. He said, Lou, let's go ahead and take a look at Alabama's schedule. So, Money Man, first of all, thank you for supporting the channel over on the Patreon page. But here you go, the Alabama schedule preview. And, man, I'm stuffed up today. Sorry if I sound a little weird. Anyway, this is a great example of what I was talking about when it comes to predicting a team's record, which, of course, I do later in the offseason, usually May, June. But to know a team's schedule inside and out can really help you when trying to predict what a team's record will be, right? Not just knowing who they play, but when they play them and where they play them. I'm going to go through this schedule game by game in a second, but first, just some overall thoughts here. Alabama has not played Alabama football on the road in particular over the last couple of seasons. Well, if you glance over this schedule real quick, you will see that I think what a lot of people would consider to be their 3 toughest games this season are all at home. Obviously, it's a benefit to play at home anytime, but particularly your toughest games, and particularly in Alabama's case, when you've been not playing your best on the road lately. And I'm, of course, talking about the Texas game, the Tennessee game, and the LSU game, all 3 at home. I kind of did my thoughts on Alabama on the SEC spring practice preview the other day, but quarterback questions, Jalen Milroe, Ty Simpson, who's it going to be? 2 brand new coordinators. They lose probably their 3 best players from last year's team, Bryce Young, Jahmyr Gibbs on offense, and then Will Anderson on defense. So I still think there are more questions for Alabama heading into this season than maybe any season since Nick Saban got there. Just a lot of questions. Very disappointing year last year. I think Nick Saban's worst coaching job. Now, not that it was all Nick Saban's fault. I know the coordinators weren't great. The fans were glad to see them go. But Alabama had one of the most talented teams, if not the most talented team they've ever had last year, at least on paper. If you go by recruiting rankings and roster talent and things like that, it was very underperforming. Underachieved last year, looking to get back on track this year. But let's take a look at the schedule. We'll go through it game by game. Spring game coming up April 22nd, so a little over a month away on that. Season going to start for Alabama on Saturday, September 2nd at home against Middle Tennessee State, which, of course, absolutely road graded Miami last year. I don't expect that to be the case here week 1. There's never a good time to play Nick Saban. But playing Nick Saban with 8 months to prepare, definitely not a good idea. Alabama will roll in this game. I really don't know which way Alabama's going to go with their quarterback. I know Jalen Milroe was the number 2 last year, and he played when Bryce Young was hurt. But he didn't play well And I think Alabama fans would agree. Yes, he's very athletic. He can run around. He's super fast. He's big, tall, strong, and can throw the ball 80 yards. Sounds like Anthony Richardson. Unfortunately, he wasn't a very good thrower of the football last year, which unfortunately also sounds like Anthony Richardson. I don't know if it'll be Milrow, or Ty Simpson, but having a game like this, game one, particularly this year for Alabama, I think is a benefit. I know the fans hate these types of games week one. Georgia's got one too this year. I hate it too. But if there was going to be a year where Alabama was going to start with one of these types of games, I think this is the year. Two brand new coordinators, losing a lot from last year, like I mentioned. And the quarterback situation, at least right now, middle of March, kind of being up in the air. This will be an opportunity, I think, if Nick Saban wants to let both those quarterbacks play in this game against Middle Tennessee State, and kind of just, maybe see who rises to the occasion. Some people are gamers, so a good year, I think, for Alabama to have this game, or a game like this, in week one. And then, of course, week two, And then, of course, week two, one of the biggest non-con games of the year this year, a rematch from last year, Alabama versus Texas, this time in Tuscaloosa. One of the best games of the entire college football season last year, Alabama at Texas. Alabama came back and won that game. Heroics from Bryce Young. Again, a huge benefit for Alabama to have this game at home. I don't think Texas is better than Alabama, but Texas has a lot less questions heading into this season than Alabama does. They return Quinn Ewers. I know they bring Arch Manning in. I would be absolutely blown away if Arch Manning plays against Alabama in week two. I just don't see any way possible. I know Sark is saying there's a quarterback competition there, and while that may or may not be true, I don't see any way possible anybody other than Quinn Ewers starts this game against Alabama in week two, barring an injury. And hey, injuries can happen anytime. We saw that last year. Quinn Ewers got hurt in the Alabama game early in the season last year. But great wide receivers at Texas. Xavier Worthy, is that his name? He comes back. They bring in A.D. Mitchell from the transfer portal out of Georgia, who I can tell you is a great wide receiver. Texas is going to have to play good defense, of course, and tough on the road here with it being at home for Alabama. But a huge game week two, Alabama hosts Texas. Another non-con game here on the road at South Florida. Again, a chance for Nick Saban to let both quarterbacks play if he chooses to do that. I would assume with Texas being a week two game that Bama will have an entrenched starter by this point in the season, but still, the South Florida game will be a good opportunity again if Nick Saban wants to let both quarterbacks play. Then you jump into your conference schedule. The last year of the SEC's 8-game conference schedule, which I guess will make the Big Ten man extremely happy because Big Ten man has been crying forever about the SEC only playing 8 conference games. Like that's the reason they've won like 13 of the last 17 natties or something, whatever. I don't know. The Big Ten man just looks for any reason to cry. The weather, the referees, injuries, other people's schedules, whatever the case. But then, of course, the Big Ten shows up in the playoffs and plays the SEC and can't win. So what are you going to do? Then Bama jumps into their conference schedule. Up first at home, September 23rd, Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss Rebels. A lot of mixed opinions on Lane Kiffin. I have a mixed opinion on Lane Kiffin. I do think he runs a good offense. I think he's a good offensive mind. I still have a little bit of an issue. I don't think I would want my head coach drawing some of the attention that he draws, whether it's through Twitter or different things like that. There was kind of a mess at the end of last season with, was he going to take the Auburn job? Was he not going to take the Auburn job? I think that kind of back and forth is what cost them the Mississippi State game. But anyway, whatever you think about Lane Kiffin, I think we can all agree there's few things in life Lane Kiffin would enjoy more than beating Nick Saban. If it's going to happen this year, it's going to have to happen in Tuscaloosa. We talked about Alabama's 3 toughest games all being at home, and I mentioned Texas, which we already talked about, and then Tennessee and LSU coming up a little further down the schedule there. If you were going to try to pick the 4th toughest game, this might be it. And again, they get this one at home, right? Huge. Look, again, this is one of the reasons I go through these schedule previews, because I can tell you a month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks from now, somebody's going to call me on a call-in show and they're going to say, hey, Lou, what do you think Alabama's records are going to be? Well, even though I know off the top of my head who Alabama's playing this year, I don't know the order of the games, or didn't until now. Didn't know which ones were at home, which ones were on the road, that kind of thing. Having these 4 games at home could be the difference in Alabama going 12-0 or 10-2 like last year when they played all 4 of these games on the road. Last year they played at Ole Miss, at Texas, at Tennessee, at LSU. Almost lost all 4. Did lose 2. This year, all 4 of those games at home. This is where you play the game makes a big difference. And in the case of Alabama this coming up season, they get these 4 games all at home. It is a huge advantage. Now they go on the road in back-to-back weeks, and this could be tricky too. Now, I don't think Mississippi State's going to be a great team this year. It doesn't feel good or fun to talk bad about Mississippi State. Tragic situation at the end of last year with Mike Leach passing away unexpectedly. But the reality is, that was Mike Leach's team. That was his offense. He designed the offense. He called the plays. He picked the players to run the plays. And that offense, Mike Leach's offense, lived in one place, and that's in his head. And unfortunately, he's gone. Mississippi State did promote from within. Arnett, I think, is his name. But anyway, he's already announced he's not running the air raid Mike Leach style offense. They're completely switching it up. And I'm not, the point of this video isn't to say whether that's good or bad, but you do have to play them there. But that should be a win for Bama, you would imagine. And then on the road at Texas A&M. And look, I was leading the charge. I was at the head of the line, in front of the parade of people laughing at Texas A&M last year. The reality is, the reason what Texas A&M did last year was so funny, so embarrassing for Texas A&M, so humiliating. The reason it was so sad is not because they're a terrible team. It's because they had a terrible record. They are not a terrible team. In fact, they're one of the 5 most talented teams in the country. That's why what happened last year is so unacceptable. Now, I say all that to say they could be a good team in 2023. Now, a lot's going to depend on quarterback play, right? Jimbo Fisher has finally brought in another coach to run the offense, Bobby Petrino. Jimbo Fisher's always called his own plays. Always called his own plays. And he was basically forced by the administration after the debacle of last season to give up play calling duties and to bring in a fresh set of eyes. And Jimbo Fisher handpicked Bobby Petrino. This is also something I've talked about a bunch of times already, so I'm not going to do it here. Doesn't matter what you think about Bobby Petrino as a human being. I don't like him either. Reality is, he's a great offensive mind. The question is, can he fix the Texas A&M offense in one offseason? And even if he could, will Jimbo fully give up control? We're going to find those things out this season. But this, at Texas A&M, is not what I would say a gimme win for Bama. They'll be favored. I think Bama's the better team. They're obviously better coached. But as bad as Texas A&M was last year, Alabama was lucky to hang on to win that thing. Easily could have lost this game last year to Texas A&M at home. Already talked about Alabama's struggles on the road over the last couple of years. If you're looking for a trap game, maybe this one. Maybe this one. Then you come back home, play Arkansas, a team that I feel like has peaked under Sam Pittman. No disrespect to Sam Pittman. I love Sam Pittman. No one that I know of roots against Arkansas. I mean, it was a feel-good story. Everybody likes Sam Pittman. But again, you get him at home. Huge talent advantage. And then back-to-back games with a bye week in between. This is huge for Bama here. You get Tennessee at home. That's going to be an emotional game. That game at Tennessee last year at night was one of the best environments in all of college football over the last 4 or 5 years. And Alabama fans had to sit at home and watch that thing on TV and see that crowd going nuts and watch Tennessee celebrate that big win. I think the home environment at Alabama for this game will be the best of the year. Alabama fans really want this game against Tennessee. Tennessee really wants this game against Bama. I do think Tennessee will be good again. Questions remain on the defensive side of the ball. They do lose Hendon Hooker and a couple of wide receivers, but that Josh Heupel gimmick offense, Joe Milton's third year in that system at quarterback, could be an interesting game. Then you get a bye week. I can't think of a better place if you're Alabama to have a bye week on this schedule than where they have it. Play Tennessee at home. Win or lose, it's going to be an emotional game. You get a week off to move past that. You host LSU, the other team that beat you last year, the SEC West Division champs from last year. Huge game every year, Bama and LSU. Huge game. Should be a good game too. LSU's got a lot coming back. They're loaded. Talked about talent at Texas A&M. You know, Texas A&M being one of the 4 or 5 most talented teams, but LSU in that category too. Then you play on the road at Kentucky. Again, sort of the Arkansas of the East. Better than what they were 5 and 10 years ago. Not necessarily a laughing stock like they have been a lot of the time, but not on the level of an Alabama. Chattanooga at home in your final non-con game of the year. This is the game that the Big Ten man will be laughing at you for. Give the Big Ten man a break. They don't have much to celebrate, so this is what they have to do. And then, of course, your annual end of regular season game, the Iron Bowl, this time on the road at Auburn. Again, back to the Alabama struggling on the road. Nowhere have they struggled more than at Auburn under Nick Saban the last 15 years. Auburn's got more wins over Bama than anybody else, and the majority of those wins have occurred at Auburn. Now, Auburn's got a new head coach, Hugh Freeze, but we've seen Hugh Freeze beat Bama a couple of times when he was the head coach of Ole Miss. We'll see what happens with the next transfer window deal with the Barn. I'm just not a believer in Robbie Ashford. You know, I know Hugh Freeze, pretty much whatever I said about Bobby Petrino, you substitute Hugh Freeze for that too. Trash human being, yeah, I know. But nevertheless, a good offensive mind. And we've seen him turn water into wine with quarterbacks in the past. So, you know, and it is their rivalry game, Iron Bowl, one of the biggest games in college football every single year, one of those anything can happen type of deals. But again, Alabama's the better coach team. They've got way more talent. They'll be a big, significant favorite. And then the SEC title game, the first Saturday of December, this year, December 7th. Alabama looking to get back to Atlanta after missing out last year with LSU winning the SEC West. So there you go. That's Alabama's 2023 schedule. Overall, how would I compare it to last year? Easier. Much easier. Now, the schedule is mostly the same. Their big non-con game is Texas, but this year they get them at home. Their 2 biggest conference games, LSU and Tennessee, same as last year, but this year they get them at home. Difficult road games at Texas A&M, I guess. Maybe at Auburn. Other than that, manageable road schedule. Manageable road schedule. Any tough stretches of games? Maybe you say Ole Miss, at Miss State, at Texas A&M. That could be a tough 3 stretch there. I'm not expecting much from Mississippi State, but it is on the road. But Ole Miss at home, Mississippi State on the road, and then at Texas A&M. At Texas A&M, the second leg of that back-to-back road games there would be the game I would watch. Possible trap game there. But this is a manageable schedule for Bama. They went 10-2 last year. Yeah, look, I think it's possible. I'm not saying this is just a Bama could be worse than last year. I'm not saying they will be, or that I even think they will be. But Bama could be worse than last year's team and have a better record based solely on this schedule because they get so many of their big games at home. Anyway, there you go. The first of many schedule previews for the 2023 season. Again, shout out to Money Man over on the Patreon page. He was the first one to comment on the post over there. Said, Lou, let's see that Bama schedule. Hope you enjoyed it, Money Man. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Make sure you hit the thumbs up before you click out of the video. Subscribe if you're not already. Have a good morning.